In the June 2018 issue of CCM's quarterly magazine, Connecticut Town and City, we dedicated a feature article to the history and importance of the Connecticut Main Street. In that article, we discussed one organization whose vision was the preservation of our downtowns, Connecticut Main Street Center. Today, their CEO, Patrick McMahon, joins us to talk about the crucial role Main Streets play in the success of our towns and cities, and what some communities are doing to support that success. We'd like to thank our premier sponsor at Digital Back Office, Palo Alto Networks. Check them out at digitalbackoffice.com or paloaltonetworks.com. The Municipal Voice is the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities podcast in collaboration with WNHH LP 103.5 FM. I'm your host, Matt Ford. As always, be sure to give us a like and let us know what you're thinking in the comments. CCM's Municipal Voice podcast continues to present a key forum on important state-local issues. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the consensus views of CCM or our member municipal leaders. Patrick, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
So while we here at CCM are kind of familiar with what Connecticut Main Street Center does, could you tell us a little bit more about the organization for the general public, what they might not know about you?
Sure, Matt. We're a statewide nonprofit organization working to drive investment to our downtowns and neighborhood commercial districts all across the state. We work with communities large and small. We were actually founded 25 years ago by CLMP as a division of their company, and then they rolled us off as a nonprofit organization. And then Eversource and DCD have been supporting our mission ever since. And we look forward to this strategic partnership that we've struck with CCM.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. You've recently struck a partnership between our two organizations, kind of aligning some of our efforts on educational programming, communications outreach, and advocacy. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, basically the strategic partnership acknowledges the fact that our downtowns and village centers are absolutely critical to the economy of the state, as well as to the grand list growth of the local communities and the vibrancy of those communities. So we've reached out to CCM. It's very critical that we at Connecticut Main Street Center have that access to the CEOs, those the first selectmen, and the town managers, the decision makers, because it is absolutely critical for downtown revitalization that the CEO of the municipality is on board and helping move the agenda for that. We are really looking to do additional educational programming of interest. Hopefully that will also satisfy CCM's municipal certification program. We've had a recovery and resiliency webinar series that I'll mention a little bit more about. And on the communication side, we have a very robust communications network. CCM has a robust network, and let's utilize the power of those to share content from both organizations with our own constituencies.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah.
That. And then on the advocacy side, we've really just kind of launched into advocacy at the state legislature. We and some other organizations a few years ago worked together to get municipal tax increment financing legislation passed. But all in all, we have not been very involved at the state legislature each year, outside of maybe drafting, testimonial here or there. We really want to be able to represent our downtown organizations and move forward programs and projects and policy issues that they think are going to be important at the state capitol. And CCM has obviously a very well connected advocacy group. Met up the other day with Randy Collins and Zach Cowan about different things that we can work together on.
Great. We're always looking to collaborate wherever we can. When we were writing about your organization 3 years ago in our magazine, Connecticut Town and City, we were writing about the lingering effects of the Great Recession, the loss of locally owned businesses, stuff like that, which obviously was a focus. But now, look at the lingering effects of COVID. You've begun a recovery and resiliency educational program. So what kind of things are you looking at there? What makes a Main Street more resilient, and what can towns and residents be doing to further that?
Yeah, it's interesting because it just when we were getting our feet back under us after the Great Recession, the pandemic hits, and the thing about downtowns is they're generally very resilient.
Mm.
And the reason being is because there's multiple small spaces. So there's always going to be some what of a churn
Yeah.
in the market, and so it's a lot. It's usually simpler to fill some of the smaller spaces than large white elephants that might be
Hmm.
out there as a result of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But it really takes concerted effort, both on the public sector side, the town leaders, the town staff, as well
Hmm.
as organizations like local Main Street groups. We have local Main Street groups, nonprofits in Simsbury and New London and Waterbury. We have things that are called downtown special services districts in the
Hmm.
big cities, like Hartford. Hartford has the Hartford Business Improvement District.
Hmm.
Down in New Haven, the Town Green area.
And what does that structure allow them to do that they couldn't do otherwise?
The DSSDs, they actually can charge an extra assessment for the properties that are within
Hmm.
that district.
Okay.
And so they have a designated funding stream that can be used for clean and safe activities. You'll often see in bids folks going around with ambassadors with the yellow jackets,
We have those in New Haven. Yep.
cleaning up the neighborhoods and et cetera, like that. And obviously really marketing and event promotion for those downtowns.
Excellent.
We really need to have that promotion happening to drive people to their downtowns with sales, just special events, and
Hmm.
some group locally has to be doing that type of work,
Yeah.
interfacing with the small businesses, interfacing with the property owners, doing the events management, checking to working with the town and others on what makes for a great downtown design.
Mm.
What are the sidewalks wide enough? Do you have signage that directs people to municipal parking lots that would benefit the local businesses? It
Hmm.
all ties in together. We really look at it as a comprehensive approach to downtown
Yeah.
revitalization.
That's really interesting. And I thought it was kind of interesting what you were saying about how it's easier in some ways to fill those smaller downtown retail spaces than it might be the big box stores or whatever.
I
And so
said
that's,
easier.
yeah,
I didn't say easy.
not easy, easier.
And so I think that's going to be it is going to be a challenge
Yeah.
for our main streets.
Yeah.
The 600 plus restaurants, according to the Connecticut Restaurant Association, have closed down, and some of
Yeah.
those are certainly in downtown locations. I'm sure there's going to be retailers that didn't make it through this. So that's going to be a challenge. And we're going to, as Connecticut Main Street Center,
Yeah.
working with CCM, make sure that we're getting the word out about programs that will make turning vacant spaces, turning the lights back on,
Yeah.
the way to go.
It seems like that they could be a big part of the recovery is those smaller businesses, the mom and pop places, getting them up and running could really
Absolutely.
help everything. Yeah.
Let me tell you some of the things that some of our Main Street managers, the Downtown Special Services District folks, town planners had to work really hard to ensure that the outdoor dining took place. And then also the local economic developers that are in many communities represented by the Connecticut Economic Development Association. They have done heroic things during this pandemic. They worked tons of hours doing whatever they could to help their small businesses survive the closures.
Yeah.
And they had to come up with special events and promotions. We had, for instance, Chris Edge in Berlin. He did a program called Eat Local, Win Local.
Eat local, win local. Okay.
If you go into two different restaurants and get a copy, scan or a photo of the receipt, send it in, you would get entered into a raffle for gift cards. And it was so popular that 5 or 6 other communities adopted it.
That's great. So other people have seen the success and replicated it.
Absolutely. And stuff like that gets picked up. They ended up being on NBC 30, and that just promoted it even more and drove more people to the area. Some of the other things that folks did, Mary Dickerson, the economic developer for Portland, she had something called Step Inside.
Okay.
And what she did was she took phenomenal pictures of the businesses themselves, as well as some of the product on the interior.
Okay.
Got the contact information from the businesses and promoted it on social media. And a lot of the product that was highlighted was sold out.
That's great.
During it. Folks were still buying. They were just buying in a different way. Or they would make an appointment to go down and visit the retailer and have an actual appointment.
Yeah.
There was some really cool things in Middletown. A toy shop put up all of the puzzles right in the front and would have numbers that you could call from the sidewalk.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and then order it from right there.
I know Old Saybrook participated in one of the webinars you did too, right?
Yes, and they had a very, I think, something that other communities should look into. It's called geofencing.
Okay, how's that work?
Geofencing is they basically put a boundary, say in a downtown area, and anybody passing through, for instance, your phone will ping, and it will say that this business has a promotion.
Okay, so when you're driving past the store on Main Street, that store will let you know, hey, there's something special today. Yeah,
so it was sort of a cooperative relationship. I believe they charged $200 for a 4-week campaign to the business, and some of the specials and products got highlighted. There's much more traffic to their websites. So those are some of the things that we have to do in this day and age. With the pandemic, obviously from Connecticut Main Street's perspective, we're big into bricks and mortar. We want to fill those spaces and have people walking in their downtowns and window shopping. However, it's absolutely critical in this day and age that folks have an online presence. They have to combine the online presence with the bricks and mortar. So we actually have a video series on our website that's viewable 24/7 that gives ideas on how you can set up an online e-commerce presence for a small business.
That's on your website?
That's on our website.
What's the address there?
ctmainstreet.org.
Okay, easy enough.
Yep. So a lot of phenomenal different promotions that occurred. Our friends at Main Street Waterbury did a happy hour series. So every Friday at 5:30, what they would do is they would encourage residents to take out, order and take out food from their local restaurants, but go to a front porch or go to a balcony or go somewhere kind of interesting, take a photograph and post it to social media.
This is a way of showing support for the community and the restaurants.
Absolutely. Yeah. And all of those efforts worked. It worked. And a lot of restaurants are probably very thankful for what happened in the small businesses, for those local economic developers and those Main Street managers going the extra mile to help the small businesses.
We want to try to avoid problems for the businesses and them having financial difficulties, but a lot of them are hurting now. And there is some relief in the form of PPP, the Payment Protection Program. Can you talk a little bit about what is available to businesses that towns and cities should, make their local businesses aware of in this time?
Yeah, there was a first round of PPP last year that was an absolute lifesaver for many businesses. I don't have the number. I think it was over $6 billion.
And that came from the federal government?
This from the federal government through the Small Business Administration.
Okay.
I believe almost $7 billion came back to Connecticut. And basically, PPP could be used for mostly payroll, but some other expenses like rent and utilities. And if it was used for pandemic purposes, relief purposes, then you could go back to the SBA and seek loan forgiveness. So it converted essentially to a grant. So it's really
Okay.
a critical funding stream. There is another round of PPP, and the
Mm-hmm.
window is closing. And so this is really important. I'd like
So
everybody.
businesses should not wait to check this out. They should look
This
into it
is
right now.
in the audience. Applications are being accepted by SBA for this round of PPP through March 31st.
Okay.
March 31st. So
End of the month.
End of the month, 2 more weeks. As many businesses as possible. It's almost a no-brainer. If you had some losses directly related to business closures because of the pandemic, go find your local bank that you're already working with, or there's lists of others that are participating in the PPP program, and make that application. It will definitely help your bottom line going forward.
So they should go through their banks.
You go through the banks. Yep.
Okay. So we were talking a little bit about how some businesses you're concerned aren't going to survive, and the problems of filling these storefronts. What can we do to reinvigorate these kind of empty storefronts post-pandemic when we're past all this?
Yeah. So there's one thing that communities have done is have set up pop-up shops.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a retailer who is interested. That maybe they make jewelry or make some other kind of a craft. They're selling some items out of their home or out of a small office, and the opportunity is to go into one of these retail spaces and test the market.
Okay, so the retailer gets to put their toe in the water, see if there's demand, if people like their stuff, without committing to a full year's lease on a space, for instance.
That's correct. There's short-term leases. Obviously you got to work with the property owner, but they like it in a way because you're bringing some exposure to the space. So
for the person that owns the building, it's good too because it gets people in there. They can see the possibilities of this pop-up. Maybe they can see the possibility of a permanent thing in that building. Okay.
And sometimes the pop-up is the one who ends up being the long-term tenant.
So they pop up and are successful, they might just stick around.
Yep. Other spaces that have been a little bit more challenging, you can essentially set up an activity.
Okay.
There's a gentleman by the name of Tim Moore from Blue House Group, who's been doing this on Pratt Street in Hartford. He set up an indoor ping pong assembly, a bunch of ping pong tables, and it drew people to Pratt Street. And people had fun. They enjoyed each other's company playing ping pong, and then hopefully went to some of the restaurants and other retailers on Pratt Street. It's such a
but this was in an unoccupied space at the time.
Unoccupied space. Okay. And Torrington got wind of this and asked him to come out to Torrington and replicate it in their downtown. So we might have ping pong establishments all over the state of Connecticut in the near future.
Is this also where things like public art come into play?
Absolutely. Public art is critical. I actually posted just to LinkedIn how important public art is. They showed some sculptures, even the Boston Commons, of some ducks just marching along, but they were big enough that the kids could sit on them.
Oh, that's cool.
And it made for just great Instagram photos. And if we could do that and replicate that type of thing throughout the state, it would be great. I know Simsbury each year usually has life-size sculptures that they bring to town. Stanford Downtown Special Services District often does this. I thought it was really cool. Like a year or so ago, it was UFOs and spaceships. Just life, something that just made for great photos. This year, what they're doing is they have pianos that you can play outside.
So that's pretty wild.
I don't know the exact number, but say there's 20 pianos in their downtown, just to add some life, something different. Yeah,
that's really cool.
I just to go back real briefly to some financial resources.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
The American Rescue Plan that was just passed.
Okay.
It included about $28 billion for grants to restaurants.
Okay.
Huge, absolutely huge. I know that the Connecticut Restaurant Association, our federal delegation,
Mm-hmm.
was very active in promoting that and trying to ensure that that got into the American Rescue Plan.
Okay.
There'll be grants up to $10 million.
Wow. Okay.
They're going to first start off, though, prioritizing smaller restaurants,
Mm-hmm.
restaurants that have less than $500,000 in sales for a
And
period of
how
time.
would the businesses find out about that? I know you said for the PPP to go through the bank. Is that also something they would talk to the bank about, or how do they look into that grant?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not certain who the Restaurant Revitalization Fund is going to go through
Mm-hmm.
at the federal level. Certainly, Connecticut Restaurant Association, if you tap into their
Mm-hmm.
website and their online presence, they'll,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure, have updates relative to that.
So let's follow them there.
Yeah, but we should, again, as many Connecticut restaurants that were hurt during the pandemic should seek this funding.
Yeah.
It will help them survive, and will keep more of them, open and serving the great food.
And bring those dollars to Connecticut.
You got it. You got
Yeah.
it. There's one other thing that is out there right now, and that is
Mm-hmm.
called shuttered venues. It was basically for live music venues,
Okay.
theatrical venues, the Warner theaters of Torrington or a Bushnell and
The Bushnell, the Schubert, College
Yep.
Street Music Hall, all of them. Yeah.
They've essentially been fully closed because of the capacity restrictions. There was just no way to really make the reduced numbers work and be able to, pay the performers. So essentially, they've been totally closed down.
Yeah.
So that shuttered venues relief is going to be very significant.
Very important. Sounds like
Those historic theaters are such a draw for the downtowns that they're located, and we're very fortunate in Connecticut to have so many of them.
We are very lucky.
You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH LP 103.5 FM.
We've been talking a lot about COVID because it is such a big impact on Main Street right now. But going into the future, there's a lot of other issues that you focus on. For instance, you have a Main Street working group that focuses on advocacy. We've talked a little bit about the small businesses and their needs, but in other ways, we need to talk about building up the infrastructure around them. So what are you doing at your organization around things like transit-oriented development, affordable housing, property taxes, things like that?
Yep. So the Main Street Working Group was established last year.
Mm-hmm.
The co-chairs who originated it were Quentin Phipps, Representative Quentin Phipps from Middletown,
Mm-hmm.
Representative Jane Garibay from Windsor, and they've recently added a freshman legislator, Jennifer Leeper from Fairfield, as co-chair. And
so from all over the state.
All over the state, and they represent communities that have these classic downtowns, and they wanted an opportunity to be able to educate the legislators on programs that are important to downtowns, and potentially advocate for policy priorities going forward. So, for instance, last year they had representatives of DOT come in and talk about efforts for transit-oriented development. They had staff of the Department of Economic and Community Development come in and explain what programs are available to small businesses, which I think is phenomenal, that we're educating the legislators on these topics so that they can better represent their constituents and help Connecticut Main Street and others who advocate for downtowns to ensure that the funding is available for really critical programs. For instance, the Small Town Economic Assistance Program that's been utilized for a lot of streetscape and other amenities, park improvements, other street improvements in a lot of our small communities. We need to ensure that that money is allocated in the budget each year. There's something called the Community Investment Act, which is an extra charge on when you make a transaction, a real estate transaction, conveyance. There's a conveyance fee that gets put into a separate account that's supposed to help open space, farmland, historic preservation, and affordable housing. And CCM and others, we have to advocate that that money gets continues to be directed to the purposes that it was originally slated for.
Is that one of those things that kind of is supposed to be for that, but sometimes disappears into other?
Sometimes it can go into the general fund. So that's why we're there advocating for its protection. Historic preservation funding through CIA helps the State Historic Preservation Office fund its operations and its grants. And that's really important to us because how we see our role is it's economic development in the context of historic preservation. So these beautiful historic buildings, whether it's the town halls, the libraries, the multi-story mixed-use classic buildings you see on our main streets, they need constant reinvestment. And sometimes the repairs can be quite costly. And so we need to have funding streams that can help that. And there's something called the State Historic Rehabilitation Tax Credit Program. And we advocate for that program as well at the state capitol because it's really critical gap financing on these type of projects. It was utilized, for instance, in downtown Windsor Locks. There was a 250,000 square foot mill building that was vacant for 10 years. And a developer out of Boston, Beacon Communities, ended up converting it to 160 units of mixed income housing.
Wow.
And again, really important that state historic tax credit and federal historic tax credits were available to help fund the gap in financing to move that forward. And that building is really close to what's going to be a future Hartford line railroad stop. So in essence, it was TOD. We're very fortunate in the state to have the Connecticut Fast Track going from Hartford to New Britain. We've got the Hartford Springfield line going from Springfield down to New Haven. We have great opportunities around each and every one of those station areas for new development, brownfield development, infill development that can be utilized to add housing, market rate housing, affordable housing, new businesses, new community facilities. So very exciting things. So on the New Haven line, as well as the Metro North going into New York, as well as Shoreline East. And I can't tell you just how critical a lot of those stations are. It's the life and vibrancy of the downtowns.
And they're already there. The train line's already going there. The stations are already there.
Yep. And folks tend to, get off the station and go, patronize some of the local businesses and restaurants. Plus, again, they also drive just new development, and that's critical to grow grand lists in a lot of these communities. A big issue right now is the affordable housing. Today, in front of the Planning and Development Committee of the legislature, they're hearing like 4 different bills on affordable housing, including one that was proposed by Desegregate Connecticut. Lots of different proposals out there for training of land use folks that are on boards and commissions for planning and zoning. Doing as of right accessory dwelling units, looking at TOD, looking at as of right development on our main streets for 2 to 4 family housing. Lots of different proposals on the table I don't know what will ultimately get through what we call the sausage grinder of state legislation.
Yeah.
But it's a critical topic that we absolutely need to address. Um, a lot of folks in Connecticut are spending more than 30%. Some are spending more than 50% of their income on housing. And when that happens, they don't have the funds that go towards healthcare and daycare and education and just being able to, enjoy, a restaurant or some retail along the way.
Yeah, those kind of housing costs that make it hard to draw people in from outside the state, and especially younger people starting families.
Absolutely. So we see our downtowns as a great location to create new housing. We have a program called Come Home to Downtown that we've worked with CHFA and LISC and the Hartford Community Loan Fund to try to get vacant upper stories of these historic buildings converted to residential.
Yeah.
So that there'd be feet on the street. The more people you have living downtown, the more folks have spending power in their downtown locations.
Yeah.
Housing downtown has been sea change in Hartford with the Capital Region Development Authority, the number of units that they've been able to bring on in some office buildings that were no longer being used for office. It's made just a tremendous difference on the vibrancy of Hartford. And so that is something we want to see, is more housing in our downtown areas. We believe that empty nesters, would be interested in living in these downtown locations. They've sort of graduated from wanting to take care of the larger single family home, and they want to be in a place where they can go to these restaurants and walk around a town green and that type of thing. Our downtowns are also really critical for attracting young talent.
Yeah.
Young talent wants to be where there's a vibe.
And you can go down to the cool cafe on the corner. You can get a coffee. You can
absolutely. And there's been some trends over the last few years, and I think that the pandemic's going to ramp that up. Is some young professionals in those larger cities are like, I can barely afford this here.
Yeah.
Why don't I look at these smaller cities of Stamford and New Haven and Waterbury and Hartford, and look for jobs here.
Yeah.
And if we get them established in downtown housing, when they're ready to have a family, likely they'll buy one of those single family homes that are in the suburbs or in more rural sections of the state.
Yeah. And it sounds like with the way the pandemic's kind of been, is that some people who aren't even necessarily going to look for a new job here could still be working for somewhere in New York, but telecommuting from somewhere in Connecticut. Like, they don't need to be in Manhattan anymore. So they can be on Main Street, Torrington. They can be on Main Street wherever, especially if there is that train station then.
Yes.
They could go to New York if they need to once a week or whatever it is.
Yeah, there's going to be a sea change. It'll be interesting to watch and see what happens to these large office buildings and the tenants. Will they occupy as much space in our downtowns? That's yet to be determined. It seems like most companies are going to want to, they understand the productivity that has resulted from people working remotely. They're not doing the long commute, but there's no substitute for in-person meetings at times.
Yeah.
There's no substitute. You know it, I know it. There's Zoom fatigue, and having meetings in person in the offices are still going to be a critical component. So I'm hopeful that as much square footage continues to, be leased, or there's space for new businesses to be attracted to Connecticut and our downtowns.
What does the future look like for Connecticut Main Street after this weird year is over? We can all kind of go out again. Was there anything that got kind of set aside this year for you that you'd like to get back to? What do you see going on in the future?
Oh, I think the big thing for our downtowns is to have events again.
Mm.
Events just add so much vibrancy and life to our downtowns. I think that there's social capital that's
Hmm.
built whenever there is a dog show or a concert on the green.
Yeah.
So when those occur, you're really it's an attraction to both residents and visitors
Mm.
to the downtowns. It provides a sense of place, and it can help in tourism efforts.
Hmm.
Some of our events are big attractions from
Yeah, this last
outside.
weekend would have been the St. Patrick's Day parade in New Haven, which is thousands of people coming downtown.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, won't it be great to have parades again?
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. And the other thing is, it's important for some of our Main Street organizations, because if
Mm.
they're a nonprofit model, like they are in some of our communities,
Hmm.
some of their budget is based on event revenue. And if that
Yeah.
event revenue isn't there, they can struggle.
Yeah, they're not just fun; they're fundraisers for a lot of these organizations.
Yeah, you got that right. So I think that's going to be, a big change when we start to see that again.
Hmm.
I think that restaurants are going to come back full force.
Hmm.
I believe that. I think it's really interesting to see some restaurants opening during the pandemic.
Yeah.
There's ribbon cuttings happening in some of our communities for brand new restaurants. So I take that as a hopeful sign.
You have to. That kind of
our
optimism
future.
you have to really
Absolutely.
admire.
So those are some of the things. I think that in a lot of our communities, finding a way to bolster or create from within more retailers, homegrown retailers that will occupy spaces.
Hmm.
Another possibility is what's called small scale manufacturers. Small scale
Hmm.
manufacturers. We're not
Okay.
talking about smokestacks. We're talking about a coffee shop that's doing the coffee roasting in the back. So
So
they have the equipment in the back.
specialty items, that sort of.
Specialty items. There is crafters and others that we see in that space that can operate in downtown locations. They might have sort of an industrial, small scale industrial aspect to it, a
Mhm.
manufacturing aspect to it. Some communities, I know Torrington created some zoning regulations
Mhm.
to set out the guidelines for small scale manufacturing, and I think more communities should definitely look into that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Some of those areas that I think right now you see things like breweries going into, they don't need to be huge, but they need to be somewhere that's got a little bit of room to put in some tanks, whatever, but also have parking and people can get there.
Yeah, have those not been really popular across the
Yeah.
state? My goodness, the beer trail and the wine trail.
And
It's
popping
really
up all over main streets.
it's really exciting. I'll mention a new kind of creative financing tool or
Hmm.
funding tool, and it's called equity crowdfunding.
Hmm.
And so there was a interesting concept. Weehaw Brewery and Roasters
Okay.
in West Hartford have are creating a space. They bought or leasing a building. They're
Hmm.
buying the equipment. It'll be a roaster during the morning.
Okay, so
So you
coffee
get your
in the morning.
and then in the night you go and you get your craft brewery. But they did some fundraising
Hmm.
online through something called Mainvest.
Okay.
And people went online, looked at their pro forma and what they were trying to raise. And
Hmm.
I think their campaign was online to raise $75,000.
Hmm.
And so with small investors investing $100, $500, $1,000,
Hmm.
they would end up getting some revenue sharing over a period of
Okay.
years. But it's just a great way to really excite some folks locally
Hmm.
into your business. It can bring in some capital, which is
Hmm.
absolutely critical. So that's a new wave thing.
Yeah,
That
it
a lot
sounds
of
like innovation
communities-
is going to be the key
Yeah,
post-pandemic, is people
yeah,
figuring out in the new normal, whatever it settles into after, it won't be the same as before, but there's going to be opportunities.
I definitely also want to mention to the audience that we have a robust small business ecosystem in the state that helps small businesses with business planning, with just about any question that they could ever come up with. There's the Connecticut Small Business Development Center that's operated out of Yukon. There's a Women's Development Council in Fairfield County. They do work throughout the state, but that's where they're located, Fran Pastor's group. There's the Women's Entrepreneurial Center at the University of Hartford. And then there's a series of entities called SCORE, the Senior Corps of Retired Executives. So they have different chapters across the state. And so our small businesses do have people that they can turn to.
There is resources out there. They just got to find them.
Resources. And that's just on the business technical side. We have financing programs that can assist the small businesses. A number of regional revolving loan programs are available. There's an organization called the Connecticut Economic Development Fund that provides micro loans. The Connecticut Community Investment Corporation, HEDCO, based in Hartford. These are for businesses that haven't quite scaled to the point that they need the bank financing. They can't qualify for the bank financing, but they can achieve some loans from these organizations, and sometimes they're partners with banks. So Connecticut Community Investment Funds will have a bank doing
that they work with.
So there's all different creative ways to help the small businesses get the financing that they need. We've got some great banks throughout the state, and their doors are open, and they want to lend. So, the small businesses shouldn't hesitate to seek lines of credit or loans that they can build and grow their businesses.
That the help is out there if you know where to look.
You got it.
Well, Patrick, thanks so much for speaking with us today. It sounds like you over the Connecticut Main Street Center are doing some good work, and we're going to be working together with CCM in the future. So great times ahead for Connecticut, I hope.
Thank you, Matt. We're really thankful for this new partnership with CCM. We think it's going to be really helpful to all of the municipalities across the state that have these historic downtowns and village centers. So thank you.
Thank you. We'd like to thank our guest, Patrick McMahon, CEO of Connecticut Main Street Center. I'd like to thank our premier sponsors, Digital Back Office, Palo Alto Networks, which you can check out at digitalbackoffice.com and paloaltonetworks.com. The Municipal Voice is a co-production by CCM and WNHH 103.5 FM. Kevin Maloney is our executive producer, Christopher Gilson is our producer, Harry Draws is on the boards, and I'm Matt Ford, your host. Be sure to check out our Facebook page and give us a like, and watch out for our CCM chat series on our YouTube page.